Hello, and welcome to the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce's Candidate Forum. This is our last of 3 forums. My name is Bruce Carter, CEO of the Chamber and your moderator for today. We are conducting these forums as a nonpartisan organization to create dialogue and discussion regarding the election. This forum is for the Victoria riding. I'd like to start by introducing the candidates. We have 3 candidates with us today as the Liberal candidate for the riding has withdrawn. Our candidates with us today, John Rizzuti from the Conservative Party, Joanne Roberts from the Green Party of Canada, and Murray Rankin from the NDP. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Bruce.
So just for everyone, our format today, there'll be opening statements by the candidates. There'll be 1 minute each. We'll follow those by a long answer session where each candidate will be given 1 minute to answer a question. That'll be followed by a 1 minute discussion period for open discussion. Then we'll move on to the next question. That'll be followed by a short answer session where each candidate will be given a maximum of 30 seconds to respond to a question. We'll walk through and do that. And then there will be closing statements. Those statements will be 2 minutes long for each candidate. There are some rules, as there are with most things in life. Candidates are encouraged to focus on the topic at hand, respect the time available. We have a timer here in the studio so that the candidates will know when their time is up. The order of the questions and the statements has been drawn at random. The candidates were not given the questions in advance. As the moderator, I reserve the right to cut the candidates off when their time is up, after they've received the signal. Ask follow-up questions, allow a party name and a response to provide a rebuttal, and if necessary, make adjustments to the format to move all of this through. We are carrying this all on Twitter. Our staff are monitoring the Twitter feed, and if you'd like to submit a question, let us know. The hashtag for this is YYJForum15. There is a bit of a time delay between ourselves here and the actual streaming, so we're about a minute ahead of all of you. That's just technology, so that's where that one goes. So follow-up to questions could be difficult from Twitter. So, without any further ado, let's begin. We'll start with opening statements. The first statement by John Rizzuti from the Conservative Party of Canada.
Well, thank you, Bruce. Hello, my name is John Rizzuti. I'm the Conservative candidate for the Victoria riding. I've spent most of my life in the Greater Victoria area as a teacher and principal. For over 30 years, I worked with children and their families to build better lives. As the son of immigrants who came to Canada together, I benefited from many opportunities that Canada afforded me. I'm running to ensure that your children and my children enjoy the same opportunities. A safe childhood, a good education, the jobs to help them get ahead, and a chance to raise their own families, as well as a hand up when in need. We live in an unstable world. Now more than ever, we need strong and proven leadership. Only a Conservative government can help us protect our fragile economy and create the opportunities for future generations.
Thank you, John. Next statement, 1 minute opening statement by Joanne Roberts from the Green Party.
Thanks very much, Bruce. You know, there's been a lot of national attention on the Victoria riding, and that's a good thing. We certainly hope that we can keep Victoria on the national agenda. Still very uncertain, though, what will happen on October 19th. And in light of that, I want to make 3 points today. First of all, as your Green Party candidate and MP, I can promise that I will put Victoria first. I'm not told what to say or how to vote, and therefore I will do the research, I will consult the community, and I will vote in the best interests of Victoria and our country. Secondly, if your worry is defeating Stephen Harper, I make the pledge that in a minority government, I will vote with either the NDP or the Liberals on motions of confidence to make sure that Stephen Harper does not form government. And thirdly, I've been a journalist at the CBC, bringing stories of this community to light for many, many years, 2 decades. And I will be tired of reporting from the sidelines. And I look forward to bringing those stories to the House of Commons.
Thank you. Murray Rankin from the NDP.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you and the Chamber for making this happen. I've been a member of the Chamber now for several years, and I really appreciate your leadership. I appreciate the business community, especially the small business community, because that's where 80% of the jobs are created in our economy. I want to be a strong voice for Victoria in a Tom Mulcair government, or if necessary in some other government, but not a Conservative government. I think after almost 10 years, people are telling me over and over again on the doorstep that it's time for change. And so consequently, I hope to earn your vote in this debate and during this campaign. The economy isn't working for everyone. I have 2 children, and I've seen in their lives how difficult it is for some to get their foot on the economic ladder. We have a practical plan to get the economy back on track. We want to keep Victoria special because people come here because of the quality of life, and I think a Tom Mulcair government will work for Victoria. I want to be part of that government and represent Victoria in Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now move on to the long answer question. Just a quick reminder, that's a 1-minute response by each candidate. In the order that I indicated as moderator, that'll be followed by a 1-minute open discussion. So this first question will be in the order of Green, NDP, Conservative. And the question is, the Capital Regional Sewage Treatment Project has come off the rails. What will you do to get the sewage treatment back on track? Joanne.
Well, I think the most important thing that the federal government can do when it comes to sewage treatment is ensure that this is a made in Victoria decision. But we can protect the funding. We have 2 pools of funding that has been made available to Victoria, and often taking away that funding has been used as a threat. I think as your MP, I will guarantee that we'll protect that funding so that we have the right solution for Victoria decided by Victorians, and that we're not feeling that something must be rushed through because the funding is at risk. So I would say my primary concern is to keep the funding on the table. But if there is a role that the federal government could play or your MP could play in bringing parties together at an impasse, I certainly would be happy to bring mediation to the table.
Thank you. Murray.
I think it's critical that the federal government continue to provide the funding that has been promised from different pots of money so we can get on with this. I respect the work that Mayor Lisa Helps and CRD Chair Niels Jensen have done to try to get a different approach so the public feels more engaged, but that is a local government decision. My role as Member of Parliament has been and will continue to be to make sure the funding is there to get the job done. We are overdue doing this. If it takes a little longer for democracy to work, that's fine, but we do have to make sure the federal government is a partner at the table with the money that they've committed to make sure we can get on with this project.
Thank you. John.
Well, first of all, let me say that the federal government has already come to the table. It has put $250 million, and it is holding it. And there is no possibility or chance that it will be taken off. It has been money given for that particular project. The difficulty with the decision is that the longer it takes, we all know that the costs are likely to go up. What we hope from the federal level is that the decision will be made in time so that that money will still be as useful as it was originally intended. But we do respect that this is a local decision. We want the CRD to make the right decision for the local area. However, we also know that our neighbors to the south are putting a little bit of pressure on us to get on with it. At this point, we will leave it with the CRD unless something changes.
Thank you. Further discussion anyone wants to have on sewage treatment, or?
Well, I appreciate that John says that the money is there and it will stay there, and I hope you can hold it. But we do know that the federal government has on those programs and has at times come in and said, you've got to get it done. So I'm encouraged that you're saying it's there and it stays there until the project's done. I hope they can hold you to that.
Well, right now we're looking at 2016.
That's next year. It's not very far away. They're not going to have it done by 2016.
Yeah. Well,
so is it going to stay past 2016?
I'm not, at this point, I'm not an elected member of Parliament. I can't give you the kind of commitment you want, but if I look at our government's record, I think with our government, when they say they're going to do something, they do it.
Right.
I will fight to make sure that that money is there for Victoria to get on with this project. That's my bottom line. It's a commitment we have to keep to the people of Victoria. Regardless of the government in power, this is something that will be done and the federal funding will be there. I'll do my best to ensure that.
Thanks, everybody. Let's move on to the next question. So this one actually comes from Twitter. The order will be Conservative, NDP, Green. So the question from Twitter, employers are facing challenges in finding appropriate employees to meet their needs, whether due to changes in the temporary foreign worker program, minimum wage, or lack of skilled workers. What can your party do to improve access to employees?
Well, we've committed, again, monies through apprenticeship programs. We've encouraged students or made it friendlier for students to go into post-secondary by adding tax incentives and putting a little bit more forgiveness into the loan process. Hopefully this will make it attractive to anyone that wants to go into the trades or look at another kind of education to get into the job market. We've also created incentives for employers through the apprenticeship grants so that they are likely to open opportunities for future employees.
Thank you. Right.
This is really, really important. A lot of people tell me that it's very difficult to get the training they need. However, there's been some really positive things done right here in Victoria. I salute the Camosun initiative to get training programs available for Aboriginal and women and other groups that have not necessarily been in these trades in the past. And there's a real leadership going on there, which is terrific in our region. But we really got to keep the funding for training up for young people, because often they graduate and can't find a job, and they need to make sure that the money is there to assist them as well. Loans and grants and so forth are critical. We've said on large infrastructure programs over $5 million that we will insist that there be a certain number of apprentice openings for people so that they can get those jobs right here in the community. So training is really important. It's of course a federal-provincial arrangement that's required under the Constitution. Federal government will, I hope, show leadership under a Mulcair government.
You know, I think when we're talking about this question, which is employers looking for employees and having trouble finding them, the one thing that neither of my colleagues are talking about is there is also the need to streamline the immigration programs. I've spoken to a number of people in this city, and they've tapped out on the number of people here in the city that are available, and they want to know, and that's where the temporary foreign workers program came in and was so badly run that we were not seeing I mean, it did not exist, but with it now being taken down, we need to look at streamlining immigration so that people can come here and work and also have the opportunity to apply for permanent residency. As well, we need to look at housing in this city. Many employers can bring people here, and if they don't have an affordable place to live, they don't stay. So I know we'll probably get to a housing question, but it is important that we look at the circumstances, that the environment that the city is providing, and the federal government can play a role in that.
Thanks. We move into general discussion.
I'd just like to agree that we need to address immigration head on. I think fully 80% of the work we do for constituents in my MP's office when I was Member of Parliament was involved in immigration. The processing times are just, the system is utterly clogged. The government has cut so many people from CIC, they can't do the job. They're actually telling those people to call the MP's office because the bureaucrats won't be able to do the job. That is wrong. And for temporary foreign workers, we want to find a path to citizenship for these people so they can be fully part of our community rather than sent back after they've done a little bit of work in our community. But I go back to training, Bruce.
You covered a lot of points.
Yeah.
Can we let John just weigh in for just a second?
Well, I'm just kind of curious and interested in some of the comments because, first of all, since the Conservative government took office in 2006, we have invited or accepted 2.6 million immigrants. 1.6 has gotten citizenship. The other point I wanted to make is on the note of immigrant workers. Well, if my memory serves me, it seems to me that the other two parties, the NDP and the Liberals, were not too keen on NAFTA. NAFTA.
So we're headed into a whole other subject.
But you know what, John,
NAFTA allows immigrant workers, and now I'm hearing that we should do more, whereas initially there was opposition to it, that it wasn't going to work, it wasn't going to be beneficial.
Thank you, John. Yeah.
But can I say that when you talk about immigration, you're talking about two-tier immigration. There have been lots of immigrants that have come to this country under your economic immigrant program, but we have not seen people who truly need support and are willing to take those entry-level jobs that right now are crying out for people. So I just, let's not mix apples
And you know what, Mary, I'm
oranges.
going to give you the last word on this
Okay,
one
there you
before
go,
we
Mary.
move on.
No, I agree with that proposition. We've really got to note that it's difficult for temporary foreign workers to ever get their foot on the ladder of permanent residency and citizenship. We think that's wrong, and we think we need to get more training. Why do we have to bring people from abroad when we have high unemployment among our youth right here?
Yeah.
That's something we should think about as well. And the cost of living is also
Thank you,
critical
Mary.
importance.
So you're the perfect straight man into my next question, which is going to be in the order of NDP Green Conservative. So you're first.
Yeah, great.
So post-secondary education is a key component of our vibrant community now and in the future. What are your plans you have regarding post-secondary education?
First of all, the debt load that students face is unacceptable. It's on average $35,000. It's shocking how much, and then people are supposed to go and have kids when it costs $1,200 per month for childcare, and they're supposed to find housing when the rental housing is virtually unavailable in this community, and the cost of housing is so high anyway. We've saddled an entire generation with difficulties, so we have to address those issues head on. We have to provide better Canada Student Loan Assistance for students. We think it's critically important that we give them a help, and we've offered $200 million to give them their first job, Bruce, so that after they've graduated and they're asked, do you have any experience for this job? And they're told, of course they don't. We're giving a grant to people in the small business sector and nonprofits so people could work there, get the experience, and get that vital first job. That, I think, is critically important.
Thank you. Joanne?
Well, I agree. I mean, we have 4 children, and I can tell you about student debt. But how do you address that? You start by saying, first of all, we take the interest off student debt. Our student loan program was never intended to have interest on it. And then in our platform, we're calling to move to the point where federal debt over $10,000 is forgiven. And you know what you'll find? Every penny that's being paid on those loans will go back into our communities. It's good for small business. And we would move to a point where we eliminate post-secondary tuition for not just universities, but for trade schools and apprenticeships, because we need people to be well trained. And many people, especially women and Aboriginals, are finding there's a barrier to getting into school, and that is the tuition. And you know, we've costed this out. We know it can be done. We think a more informed populace, it is our greatest resource in this country, is our people. And educating our people will be good for this country all around. And I think it's an exciting future.
Thank you. John?
Well, the Conservative Party's #1 priority is the economy. And with the economy goes the jobs. And with the jobs, we recognize that we have to do skills training and education. And we've been doing that. We've been funding institutions, and we've been supporting potential students with incentives so that if they do not have the money or they come from a lower income bracket, we are making it easier for them. We are also helping families get started in their planning with RESP, and we've adjusted contributions to make it friendlier so that planning could start well in advance, or it could start later on. But in either case, we are providing tax credits and benefits so that those that need that kind of education and skill training can do it.
But John, you have to have money to put into those programs, and that's where students are having a hard time. I can tell you, I have a daughter with 2 degrees, one of them a master's. She works here in town with refugees. She's barely making rent, let alone putting money.
Sorry. One of the challenges I have, and I got 4 kids as well, and involved in the education system, is I hear the numbers that people are talking about student loans, and I think to myself, did you go to school for 20 years? Because there's no way your tuition adds up to that.
No, but you know what? And this is the point. Not only did they not go to school for 20 years, they all had part-time jobs. You know, people look at me and go, oh, well, if you have a loan, you must be lazy. That's not true. There are kids who are working very hard. You've got tuition, you've got books, and tuition runs about $4,000 to $5,000. You've got books, you've got accommodation, you've got food.
And you know what? People can't find jobs
No.
in the middle of their education like we all did, because there are no jobs. And so what are they doing? A lot of young people are doing these unpaid internships
we've got
for which they have
those.
absolutely no rights under the
Look,
Canada Labour
I think
Code.
you hit on something. It's not realistic to give free tuition. If we make it free tuition, we're going to lose control of many other aspects. I think we can certainly soften the blow, but I think somewhere in this we have to act responsibly.
Okay.
And
But you know, at one
The
point,
debt load-
at one
you know what,
point-
we're
debt
still
load
on
is
education,
enormous.
but I'm going to try and
Well,
move
school-
us on.
we
I'm going
used
to
to
try and
pay
move
for
us
high
on,
school.
Joanne.
We
Wish
used
me
to
little
pay
luck.
for
I'm
high
going to try and
school.
do that.
We
Thank
used to
you.
pay for high school.
So-
It was
When
only
the next-
free
When did
till
we
grade
pay for
8.
high
So
We did.
I'm trying to
1935, we
stick to the
moved to-
topic at hand, Joanne. So,
All right.
and that was
But this
post-secondary
is
education.
not something that we are unfamiliar
I'm
with
sure
in
that you're
Canada.
going to have lots of time in other forums, and maybe even another question. But we're going to get you excited about other things. So,
Grade 8.
It's all
That's what
exciting.
people paid for. Up to grade 8 was free.
okay. So the next question is in the order of Conservative, NDP, Green. Love to see your passion. We'll see if we can get that about this one. Urban areas throughout the country. So once again, order Conservative, NDP, Green. Urban areas throughout the country are significantly challenged by the growing cadre of homelessness. What is your party going to do to address homelessness in Canada? John.
Well, that's a big issue. We all know that. It's a very complicated issue. At this point, with regards to the federal involvement, if I were elected and a member of Parliament, I would do my very best to try and bring some money to the table and see if we can generate some discussions. But this would take the municipal government, it would take provincial, it would take community leaders to start the discussion. My concern is that right now it is definitely growing. And I question whether the solutions that we're applying at this point need to be re-examined. I think we need to look at why it is that our homeless situation, in spite of some of the monies that's coming in, is still not reaching the satisfactory levels that we want. So I would be very happy to engage in some conversations to try and figure out how we could lift these people out of that situation.
Thank you. Murray.
The Times columnist put it well in an editorial in late July. The federal government has been missing in action on the homelessness file. 20 years ago, they were spending over twice what they're spending now on issues to deal with homelessness. I respect that we have a housing first strategy and a commitment to mental health issues as part of the Conservative government. We support that. But we need to build housing, and we need to get the federal government at the table. Imagine a city like Victoria digging into its contingency fund in order to do emergency things because the federal government won't step up and help. So we've really got to get them to the table to start building houses using economic incentives under the Income Tax Act to assist. And the pleas that the local mayors have been making to the federal government have fallen on deaf ears. If I'm re-elected as member of Parliament, this will be a priority. This is the 9th debate we've been in. It's the first one the Conservatives have come to. We've heard it every single time. This is a crisis in our community.
You know what? I'm going to give you a chance to respond in the 1 minute. Joanne, it's over to
Okay.
you around homelessness.
This problem started in 1989. So it has been growing for 25 years. So when John says, we don't understand the roots of it, we can look back to the roots. In 1989, we lost our national housing strategy, and the federal government started pulling out of housing.
Exactly.
And we know what the problem is. Right now, 1% of our national federal budget goes to housing. The housing community has looked at that and said, if we can have 1.6%, we can solve the homelessness problem. So we need to get a national housing strategy that looks at diversity of housing. We start building more rental, we start building more social housing, we bring in co-ops, and we work with our communities to put housing first and to bring the federal government, which has been missing in action, back to the table. I know this issue, and I tell you, I will work tirelessly to make sure we solve it.
I'm surprised at my two fellow candidates. Just this morning, the Victoria Mayor was on the radio saying what the help was and explaining it in dollar amounts. I would also like to remind my fellow candidates that since 2006, $23 million has been sent to Victoria, which is the equivalent of 1,300 housing units. We bring the money and we turn it over, but there are other levels of government that work with those amounts, and they set their priorities and they do what is important to them. But to say that the federal government is been absent or missing would even refute what Mayor Halp said this morning.
No,
It's
that's
not what
not
she-
true, because I listened to her this morning too. And one thing that she is very concerned about is the fact that your leader as Prime Minister has never met with the premiers. You've got to meet with the premiers if you're going to work together on a coordinated effort.
This is
Or you
a
wanted to say.
municipal issue.
Right.
You know, it's a
also
municipal issue, it's a provincial issue with BC Housing, who I salute is doing work.
Yes.
But the federal government, and it's not me saying it, it's the Times Colonist and it's other political leaders across the spectrum, including the municipal leaders that have come to Ottawa, it's time for the federal government to take this seriously. They have not.
Well, Mr. Rankin,
So-
you have been the representative for Victoria. Could you not do something?
There's a
towards
difference,
that?
Mr. Rizzuti, between being in government and being in opposition. I'm
Thank you.
doing my best, like pushing against a brick wall is what it's like.
So Victoria
So thanks.
needs,
So we're gonna move on to the next question. I think that's an interesting line of discussion.
It is.
So the next question, this is in the order of Green, Conservative, NDP. So there is considerable amount of marine traffic that moves past Victoria to Vancouver. About 70% of Canada's seagoing trade moves right past our door. What, if any, changes do you intend to marine safety or marine traffic regimes? Talking about marine traffic.
Well, I think the first thing that, as a Green Party candidate, I want to make sure is we don't increase that traffic. We don't increase it 7 times, because if the Kinder Morgan pipeline goes ahead, we will see increased traffic by our shores. But we've also need to bring back funding to our Coast Guard stations. I mean, that's really what this question, I think, is about. And I mean, I totally agree. We need to be safe on the water. It only takes one accident. We have some of the best in the world when it comes to Coast Guard and Coast Guard safety, and we have tied their hands by closing stations. You need to be able to see what you're doing. You need to be close so you can get there quickly. So we would reverse the cuts that the Conservative governments have made to Coast Guard.
But no increases in traffic.
No increases in traffic.
Thanks.
At least
And
tanker traffic.
Conservative.
well, first of all, there's going to be tanker traffic whether we want it or not, because it goes 2 ways. We've got tankers coming in to deliver goods, and we've got tankers going out to ship and export goods. Right now, we have 2 ocean science research bodies that are at work monitoring the chemistry of the water to see whether there are any harmful substances. One is Ocean Smarts Smart Oceans that operates out of the University of Victoria, and the other one is ONC.
Ocean Networks
Ocean
Canada.
Networks Canada.
And they're out there and they're doing their due diligence. They're monitoring our waterways to make sure that if there are any harmful things happening, that they will alert us, and then we will mitigate whatever the risk or circumstance is.
Thank you. Right.
I did a motion in Parliament when I was Member of Parliament saluting the work of Ocean Networks Canada and the research consortium of universities, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about cuts to the Coast Guard. Were you as embarrassed as I was when we had a tiny spill of bunker sea oil in English Bay last year and it took them hours to get it cleaned up? Imagine if that were a large tanker with hundreds of thousands of gallons, liters of bitumen going off our shoreline. Are people confident based on that experience that it would be cleaned up? The Conservative government have gutted the Fisheries Act, have fired scientists left and right. I've had them crying in my office from DFO and muzzled those ones that are left. We don't enforce our laws and we don't take the environment seriously. The NDP will.
Thanks. And we move into a short 1-minute discussion.
Well, I'd like to point to the fact that the Department of Fisheries and Oceans had one of the leading experts on this coast on pollution oceans, and he reported to Canadians. I mean, we paid for him. Ocean Networks Canada is doing great work, and it is good that we're supporting it. And Elizabeth May certainly worked to make sure they had funding. But Ocean Networks Canada priority is not to report to Canadians on the quality of our water and the level of our pollution. Peter Ross was fired, and fortunately for us on the West Coast, he's working at the aquarium. But you can't fire the people who are going to tell you what you're doing.
This is the short discussion
Okay,
period.
all right. Sorry.
All right.
Is
No, I have
it my
nothing.
turn?
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it was my turn.
Yeah, you can.
I would just like to reject this notion that conservatives are not environmentally friendly. I think it's ridiculous. The fundamental difference between our way of doing it and the other parties is that we want to put regulations, and we want to put regulatory laws and requirements at the source. Taxing or losing jobs is not going to solve the problem. We've done very well from 2005 to 2013. Our method of doing this has reduced carbon emissions by 3%.
I think you've made the assertion
respond?
that
Yes.
yeah, you will.
Okay.
You know, that you are environmentally friendly and understand that.
We have a
I'm gonna
record
give,
to
you know
prove
what,
it.
I'm going to give the last
Oh,
word on
well,
this
I
one
taught
to Murray.
environmental law for 12 years and practiced it in courts and tribunals across the land. I'm here to tell you the Conservative record on environment is atrocious. It's a national disgrace. Canada gets the Fossil Award every year for inaction on climate change. To suggest that cutting the Fisheries Act, the Environmental Assessment Act, all the other bills that they've
Navigable
gutted
waters.
somehow makes them environmental stars is atrocious. It's a
Thank you.
joke.
just
No,
as a-
no,
Canada's
no, no,
carbon
I-
emissions are
I'm going to move on from this
1.6%.
point.
Thanks to Ontario shutting down coal-fired plants.
Thanks to the recession.
Okay. So the next question. Whoa, wishing the moderator luck now, but we're having fun.
Yes,
you
we
guys
are.
are doing well. Okay. So this question is in the order of NDP, Conservative, Green. This is a Twitter question. So these always end up a little longer. I'm not sure how that happens, but
They're only supposed to be 140 characters.
it must have come in 3 parts. So small business owners perceive that interaction with government services almost always becomes an us versus them mentality, with more focus on policy than actually for the small business owner just trying to get the business done. What can your party do to improve the level of service provided by the government agencies? And that's starting.
Okay, well, a number of, right here in Victoria, the agencies I could discuss have been closed down. The CIC is one. Of course, CRA doesn't see people anymore. You have to call an 800 number. You know, and likewise, there's a number of agencies that are simply missing in our lives. It used to be part of the federal government's service to businesses in this city. We've committed to simplifying the Income Tax Act because I hear so much about it as former national revenue critic about the complexity and the lack of assistance in understanding how it works, both GST and the CRA generally. That would be of help. And the federal government has to make rules that are, for example, in the retail sector, applied to make sure that our large credit card fees, such as gold card fees, aren't in some code of practice or voluntary code as the Conservatives would have it, but negotiated and made firm. When I talk to small business owners and retailers, I think that's a very, very important commitment that we will make in that regard. And secondly, we're going to lower the tax rate by 2% more quickly than the Conservatives on small business.
Interesting segue. Mr.
Well,
Rizzuti.
first of all, on that last note, we have already lowered the business.
So you know what? I'm actually going to draw this back to how do we improve the interactions with government? You know, this is what we're talking about. The question was, you know, what can your party do to improve the level of service by government agencies? I want to try and focus on that.
Well, we have funded the various financial institutions that support business. In addition to that, we have reduced red tape by 20%. We set up a commission to look at it some more to continue. We want businesses to have all the tools they need and as much access to do what businesses do. They're the backbone of our economy. They're the job generators. It is in our interest as Conservatives to make sure that businesses are supported at all levels.
Thank you. Joanne, what can your party do to improve the level of service provided by government agencies?
Well, I certainly would agree with John that small business is the economic generator of our economy, and it's why it's a priority for the Green Party. Elizabeth May introduced a bill in the House of Commons just before the House was dissolved, saying that all legislation brought in by the federal government should consider the effect on small business. Because this is what happened, as Murray was alluding to, that the federal government passes a law in some other area and it affects a small business, and small business was forgotten. So the first thing we have to do if we're going to improve service is to know what legislation will mean for small business. We're also committed to lowering the tax rate, but also cutting the red tape, simplifying the tax forms, but also looking at where other regulations end up having an effect, whether it's a tariff on something that comes into a small business. Those are the places where they get caught. Those are the places where it needs to be streamlined, and we need to know before we pass legislation what it'll mean for small business.
Well,
Thank you.
as far as legislation and small business, again, I mean, right now there is talk, and some provinces already have enacted it, and that's the wages. I mean, if we're looking to see what will encumber businesses, a rapid, sudden increase to minimum wage is going to have a huge ripple effect. And my question...
This is service, right?
but-
Talking about
Yeah,
service.
Yeah.
so we're back to that services piece.
On the service, if you have nobody to provide the service because they've all been fired, how can you provide service? And that's the situation with many federal agencies. How many people tell me they've been put on a 1-800 hold list for hours and hours? That's not service. I don't care if it's business or veterans or seniors. It's the complaint I get most frequently. So that's service. If you decide you want to balance the budget by getting rid of lots of service, I guess that's how you do it.
But does it mean that the government, though, is really involved in too many things anyway, and perhaps none of the regulation is needed at all? Is that an option?
Which area would you
I'm saying
suggest
that
we cut?
it is
first?
for- it is for us.
I guess I'm doing the...
What area would you
as
cut?
a small business,
It is
I
for
am just trying to sell a widget,
Yeah.
and man, it's really hard out there.
I kind of like food inspection. I kind of like drug inspection. I kind of like agricultural. I want to make sure that I know what I'm eating. I think those are legitimate federal services. Most Canadians agree.
Okay. Thanks. We're going to move on to the next question. Thank you. Appreciate that. This question will be in the order of Green, Conservative, and NDP. This is a Twitter question. Starting with the Green Party, Joanne, where do you stand on the investor-state dispute settlement clauses in free trade agreements?
Well, you know, I feel that we have started to see investor-state clauses causing Canadians to lose their sovereignty. So we're opposed to them. We feel that corporations should not have the right to challenge Canadian sovereignty, to come into us and say, we don't like the way you put that legislation in place. We feel it's discriminatory, and we're now going to sue you, not in our courts. We're going to sue you in a quasi-judicial setting, in an arbitration. These agreements are costing Canada money, but more importantly, and this is why Canadians should care, they're costing us our sovereignty. So we're very opposed to, not opposed to trade. We believe in trade. We're a trading nation. We believe in fair trade. But if you're going to have fair trade, you've got to question whether our sovereignty comes under scrutiny and is attacked.
Thank you. John.
Well, we support trade. We've added 39 new trade agreements. Our Prime Minister has said that there is no way that Canada is going to go in with a weak bargaining position nor erode any of the benefits that we're enjoying now. So as far as I'm concerned, we seem to, there will be glitches, there will be problems, but they'll need to be resolved as they come up.
Thanks. Murray.
We too believe that trade is essential to a country like Canada. We are a trading nation, of course, and these particular dispute resolution systems are causing a lot of concern, not just in Canada, but in Australia and Germany, in the secrecy with which they're negotiated and how they work. And so we think there needs to be improvements in that area, and I'd like to work with our allies also in these trade arrangements to improve these kind of arrangements. But I want to go back to the start.
So are we going to stick to trade agreements?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Trade,
That's the
and so therefore I want to say that it's important that Canada be a player in the world because we are a trading nation. However, we have to look at these agreements in aggregate and see whether the benefits outweigh the costs, and often these investor-state dispute resolution systems are part of the problem, part of the costs.
Thanks. And you know what? I'm not going to do the 1-minute discussion here. I think we get into an area that's pretty technical. We're going to move on. I thank you for your comments around the investor agreements. We're going to move on to the next question. If you didn't think you were having fun before, we're not done yet. So this is in the order of NDP, Green, Conservative.
Okay.
So Murray, you're up first.
Yep.
The current laws regarding marijuana leave Canadian municipalities really in an untenable position. What do you intend to do about this as a federal MP?
Well, first of all, the federal government is, when the UBCM, the Union of BC Municipalities, has to slag the federal government for not really helping them solve what is a problem in many communities, I think it tells you that they're, again, missing in action, as in so many areas. We think the marijuana laws need to be reformed. I think most Canadians agree with that. We believe that decriminalization is necessary. Possession. No one should go to jail for a small amount of pot anymore. Come on. And we got to get rid of the records that people have had over the years. Hundreds of thousands of Canadians. We also need to know that medical marijuana, according to the courts, is here to stay, and we agree with that. And we need to have a hard look, an adult conversation very quickly about the recreational use of marijuana to make sure there are no unintended consequences. Some parties are simply talking about legalization. We're talking about getting our hands around the problem and figuring out what the best solution for Canada is. There's a number of models out there. Let's get it right.
So, Joanne,
Well,
medical marijuana problems are causing an untenable position for municipalities. What are you going to do?
Well, decriminalization does not allow you to regulate. So in order to regulate, and I think that many people, and that's what municipalities are asking for, we need to be able to regulate the distribution of marijuana. If we're going to do that, we must legalize it. So the Green Party is saying it is time to legalize marijuana, not without restraints, not without regulations. In fact, that's why we're legalizing it. So we can actually say who it should be available to, where can it be dispensed, how much active ingredients are in it, how should it be labeled, should you be allowed to have it in other substances. These are all things that we can deal with if we legalize marijuana. As well, we'll be able to offer taxation, and we'll be able to protect those small growers who are using it for purposes. So these are all things that the Green under the legalization. It is a difficult topic to discuss, but certainly the public in Canada, I think, are well ahead of where we are as government.
Thank you. So, John, current laws regarding medical marijuana leave Canadian municipalities in a real wreck.
Well, first of all, marijuana is illegal. Secondly, as a formal principle, I know what marijuana, when it comes into a school or into a school ground, does. There should be genuine concern. A lot of the information that our public is getting about marijuana is anecdotal. I'm looking for more concrete scientific support for its use. I'm also concerned that the marijuana that's available now is, 40 times stronger than we remember back in the 60s. In addition to that, medical marijuana does not have an ID number. It has not gone through the rigorous tests that Health Canada would put other drugs and medications through. We don't know what a proper dosage is. We don't know what the efficacy is with other things because there's no warnings, there's no labels that will suggest what it is that's going on. And also the access seems to be fairly simple, and it certainly is different than if I go through a medical doctor.
Thanks, John. Now.
Well, I've been to a continuing medical education seminar with doctors who are prescribing cannabis for the treatment of certain things, and they make no bones about it for certain conditions. And I've heard, of course, constituents tell me the same thing, that it is a valuable commodity. Having said that, I agree. We need to get our hands around it and regulate it better. So yes, it doesn't have an ID number and all of that, but there are federally licensed producers out there who take their responsibilities seriously. And in terms of the cannabis dispensaries, in Victoria and Vancouver, obviously there's an issue. The municipalities are calling for help. The federal government won't answer the phone.
And I'm thrilled to hear John say that the Conservative government is interested in scientific proof, because scientific proof is something that they could have been doing in the 9 years you've been in power, is go out and ask for the evidence. Trouble is, you don't have a very good relationship with scientists. But I think if you want scientific proof, you should go and get it. And we will answer all the questions that have been certainly raised by the New Democrats through legalization.
John.
I think right now the difficulty is, look, marijuana is illegal. Until that gets resolved, why would we be going to
Resolve
look?
it then. Make it legal. There's the
And
simple
I
answer.
think you missed the
The
point.
courts have said it's
There's
here to
nothing-
stay.
Yeah.
The
There's
courts have
nothing
said
that-
it's here to stay. Medical
But-
marijuana is a fact of our legal life.
Yes, it is through the courts, and nobody's
So it's not
implemented
illegal
the-
in those circumstances.
Until, if someone were to challenge it by the notwithstanding clauses, it might change.
So, folks,
Good luck on that one.
Yeah.
I think that you've all made your positions pretty
Yes, I
clear
think
on
we
this
have.
issue, and we're gonna move on. That ends the long answer portion. We're going to move into the short answer now. So you're going to get 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Right?
I feel
Don't
like
feel as though you have to take all the time.
I feel like we're on reach for the top and we should have buzzers.
You are. And better yet, you're first, Joanne.
Ooh,
So there you
buzz.
That'll teach you.
We have a problem with housing, be it subsidized, low income, affordable, workforce, you name it. What's your housing strategy? 30 seconds.
Our housing strategy, as I mentioned, is first of all to get all the players to the table. So we need a national housing strategy. We need to bring diversity into the marketplace. We're not building rental housing right now in the numbers that we need. So we need a federal tax credit that will take some of the edge off. But we also need to start retrofitting our buildings, which would be good for the environment. And and bring back funding for co-ops.
Thank you. So, Murray, what's
I
your
agree.
other strategy?
Funding for co-op, we've committed to it. Retrofitting, good idea. Affordable housing using the tax system is exactly what Canadians have, other countries have done much better than Canada. We can do it again. We did it earlier in the 70s. We can do it again to make sure we have the kind of housing we need in this community. We don't have affordable housing. That's been what the Chamber has pointed out in the past, as others have said. That's a priority in Victoria. In this region, if we're going to get workers to come here and families to live here and be able to afford it, we've got to move on that file.
Thank you.
Well, we have a national housing strategy. Obviously, people want to see it become better. So if elected, I'm willing to sit down and listen and find solutions.
Thanks. So move on to the next quick one, and this will start with Murray. Transport Canada has indicated a desire to divest itself of the Harbour Airport. What's your position on this divestiture?
No such decision can take place until the people of Victoria are consulted. The record of the government in consultation has been woeful. We've seen it with respect to First Nations. We've seen it with respect to neighborhoods and communities. Unless and until there's an understanding of what the actual consequences of that will be for our community, we can't go ahead. Once we get people talking about it and working constructively, we can look at it.
Thank you, John.
Well, I personally wasn't aware of this. I understand that it is the largest seaport in the country. So I'm going to pass on this one
Okay,
until
thanks.
I
Joanne?
find out more.
Well, I think it's interesting that we've had this federal government asking people like Vancouver whether they want to run our airport, and we need to make sure that this is going to be a well-operated, safe facility in this town. When we divested of land-based airports, there was a lot of money on the table to make that transfer to local management. If they're not talking about putting a large amount of money into divestiture, there's no discussion to be had.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question. This will start with you, John. What is the most important infrastructure project in this riding?
Well, that's a good question. I have two. One is the harbor, but before I can get to the harbor, transportation. I think right now Victoria has been growing. We see that we have congestions in different parts of the city. So I think for me right now, as much as I want to see the harbor grow and become
But
bigger,
what's the project, I guess? Transportation is good. That's a
I
that's a
think we need to
category.
look at transit, light rapid transit, or something that we need to keep moving people around. We've got the bike lanes, we've got the walk lanes, we've got the interchange coming. I think the next step is to look to see if we can move people by light rail.
Joanne, what's the most important infrastructure project in this riding?
In this riding, well, you don't have to take my word for it. I checked with the city, I checked with the Chamber. It's the Belleville Terminal, $18 million. It's at the top of everybody's list, Tourism Victoria. So it's good to know what your riding wants. That's what the riding wants. That will be my top priority. I will get you that $18 million at the best of my ability.
Well, I've tried to get that $18 million, and I don't have anything to show for it. The federal government didn't include it in the last budget, but I can agree with Joanne on this important point that the Tourism Victoria, the Chamber, the city, First Nations, the Hotels Association, everybody agrees that that is job one. That is the infrastructure project we need to get on with, and the federal government has to come to the table. It's embarrassing for people to come off the ferry in the rain into ATCO trailers, and that's their first impression of Victoria. We can do better.
Okay. He's going to love some of these.
Oh, gosh.
Another Twitter question.
Okay.
And this
Oh, dear.
supports civic amalgamation. And again, it's not a federal issue, but
It's-
you know what?
I was just about to
very
talk now.
it's very real for our members and
Okay, let me talk about civic amalgamation because this is a story I have worked on a lot and I have met with several of the groups that are involved in it. So this is going to have to be a made in Victoria solution. I'm not sure you bring 13 municipalities together, but we do now have agreement that there should be a survey. I think that's a good thing. I think we need to talk with people about could we have smaller groups. We also need to look at how we elect CRD directors and whether they should be elected independently so we have somebody that represents all communities.
Thank you. Right.
One of the things that I've learned in my time as
Stay
member
out
of
of this.
Parliament is that there are local issues and there are national issues. And I think it is not appropriate for a federal MP to jump in and say, this is what should happen on a local issue. This is a quintessential local issue. There are efficiencies that can be gained. On the other hand, there are drawbacks. And it seems to me, like so many other issues, that the federal government should be a partner in any of these decisions because there will be federal ramifications, but this is a decision that the local governments have to make after consulting with their people.
Thank you.
Well, certainly it's not going to be the federal government that's going to decide the question of amalgamation. However, having said that, and barring the exception of Langford, I think the other municipalities are going to have to look eventually at operating costs. We've been putting in a lot of money into infrastructures, and then the operating costs kick in. And I think that amalgamation could be one of the solutions that eventually will need to be looked at, or some kind of sharing process, maybe a partial or a full.
Thanks.
Do we get any, this just keeps
No,
going?
this
Okay.
just keeps going then. Yeah. You know what? It goes all the way to October the 19th, Joanne.
All right, okay, good. I just wondered, I thought, am I missing?
No, we're trying to
Okay,
move through
yep,
some
yep,
subjects relatively
absolutely.
quickly, right? One of the ones I know we've touched on a bit, but I think it's worth touching on in particular is, and I can't remember where we started with the last one. Does anybody? So, Murray, you're up first.
Okay.
What would your party commit to providing? Would your party commit to providing incentives for employers to offer more paid work placements for students during post-secondary education?
We already have. We offered $200 million across Canada for those students who have finished school and need that first job but can't get it because it says help wanted but experience required. We're going to work with small business and with the nonprofit sector to get people that first job, that first step on the economic ladder. And we're also requiring apprenticeships for large infrastructure programs over $5 million so those people can get their experience as well. We think this is critically important.
Yeah, I think right now we're offering, 10% on wages for hiring apprentices and new employees. So yes.
You know, one of the most exciting things in the Green Platform for me is a program called the Youth Service and Environmental Corps. And it's kind of, think of it as a Canadian gap year. So students 18 to 24, $40,000 a year for 4 years, would be hired to work in municipalities on environmental adaptation, recreation with at-risk youth, working and they would be paid $15 an hour, and at the end of it, they'd get a $4,000 credit to tuition. So they'd have that year of experience, and they would have income. I think it could be very exciting.
Thank you. We're going to move into closing statements.
Okay.
I'm starting to do that transition now. The first one will be Joanne Roberts, then John. Done great. I know that I've throttled you back on occasion. No, we only have an hour. You guys have a few more weeks, so you know.
Yeah.
And but we're now going to move on to closing statements. They're going to be 2 minutes long, and Joanne Roberts, we'll start with you for your closing statement. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank the Chamber for the good work that it is doing in this region. I feel that the federal government can come to the table to make sure that we're supporting economic development in this region. And it is time that we started working together. I think back to the 1980s when we had 3 levels of government coming into communities to work on economic development, not just project-based, but providing operating funds. The Green Party is a party that believes in working together. We're calling for the time to come in Canadian history where we bring together premiers and prime ministers and municipalities and the leaders of First Nations and the Aboriginal councils, Inuit and the Métis. Bring them together in what we're calling a Council of Canadian Governments. And I really believe if we start talking to each other, we can see projects move ahead, projects that would be good for Victoria. The Green Party is a party of small business. We're also a party that believes we need to protect our environment. We love Victoria. We live here. And we know it is time to defend our coast, but it is also time to restore our democracy, to have MPs not reporting to party leaders, but to reporting to the people who are in their constituency. I can be that MP. The Green Party, as we have seen with Elizabeth May, can make a difference, even with 1 MP in a majority Conservative government. Elizabeth May spoke out for the residents of Saanich Gulf Islands, but she was also a strong voice for the environment in this country. She raised the conversation. Just imagine if there were more Green MPs in a minority government. We will pledge to work with the Liberals and the New Democrats on motions of confidence to make sure that the Stephen Harper government does not form power, does not take power. And so you can count on a Green MP to be your voice, to bring critical thinking and research and representation. I'm a good communicator. I would like to be your MP. I'm asking for your vote.
Thank you, Joanne.
Thanks.
Once again, we're going to continue with closing statements. John Rizzuti from the Conservative Party.
Thank you, Bruce, the Chamber, and fellow candidates for this opportunity. Let me say a few words about the record of our government. First of all, the economy. We created 1.3 million net new jobs, most in the private sector, full-time and high wages. The New York Times reported that Canada has the wealthiest middle class in the world. We have now surpassed the Americans for the first time ever. Canada is the only G7 country that has balanced its budget, and we've done so at the same time that we've increased the federal transfer payments to health care by 6% annually. We have launched a $50 billion infrastructure, skill training, and innovation program to address bridges, roads, etc. And it's the largest commitment in Canadian history. A Canadian family with 2 children is $6,600 per year better off than it was 10 years ago because of our Families First priorities. In summing up our record, the Reputation Institute of Copenhagen has ranked Canada #1 in the world. Canada is the most respected and admired country in the world. All Canadians can be proud of this achievement. My pledge to you is to serve you as I have lived. I will keep my word, I will listen to everyone, and I will work hard to make my community better. You have an important choice on October 19th. You can vote for strong, proven leadership, or you can vote for deficits and higher taxes. Help me build a better Canada. I ask for your vote on October 19th. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Now the final closing statement, 2 minutes from Mary Rankin from the NDP.
Thanks, Bruce, and thank you to the Chamber for organizing this important event. I raised 2 children in this community. I have lived here for 30 years. I care deeply about the quality of life of Victoria, as do all of us who live here. I'm concerned that our economy isn't working for everyone. I know from looking at my son's friends that for many people it's a struggle. Youth unemployment is twice the national average, and people are having trouble in this economy. Seniors are having trouble. And I want to get back on track. When I knock on doors, I find that the issue in 95 out of 100 people's mind is Mr. Harper and not wanting 4 more years of Conservative leadership. We have to change the government. People want that change, and we hope that you will support the New Democratic Party. We are in a position to form government with this riding and others that we're hoping to win in British Columbia and across Canada. We will work with the Liberals if we need to, but one way or the other, people tell me they want me to be part of a new government, a non-Conservative government going forward into the future, so we can do the things that people in British Columbia and Victoria in particular care about. Getting our economy back on track. A national childcare program which will help people who are now paying on average $1,200 per child, finding a way for them to make ends meet. Helping with affordable housing. We've heard about homelessness as well in our community. The fact that we have many businesses shuttered, and we need to figure out why and how the federal government can be a trusted partner at the table dealing with infrastructure and creating the business climate that's required. I ran a small business in Victoria for 10 years. I also taught before that at the University of Victoria. I believe I have represented Victoria well in the last 3 years. I will continue to be a strong voice, but this time I want your support to be on the government side of the bench, doing things for the people of Victoria. My name is Murray Rankin. I would welcome your support. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of the Chamber of Commerce and the community, thank you for participating both in the candidate forum and really making that huge personal commitment to run for public office. Our democratic system relies upon you folks doing that, and thank you. Thank you very much. This concludes our candidate forums. The videos will be available at victoriachamber.ca. They'll be there until the election. On behalf of the Chamber, I'd like to thank you all for watching and participating in the Twitter feed. I encourage everyone to continue the discussion, be it on Twitter or with your neighbor over a cup of coffee in your community. Remain engaged, and most importantly, get out and vote. Thank you.